Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Sattology means science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake, lie, or imagination. Now, mythology destroys your identity. Like if 2 days back I was going in a train, I hardly use a train, but I used a train that day in San Diego just to travel. And good experience. And I was just randomly, somebody asked me, "Are you the guy who runs Sattology?" Pleasantly surprised because in San Diego I did not know. And he said, "You use the word mythology for Christian and you call it Christianism. You did not say, you add the ism to that. Why?" And I said, I was thinking maybe he has a knife or something. Then I stepped back and I said, "Well, you can read my books." And immediately by that time, my station came and I got off immediately. Because this is how people take it seriously. So please, people who are belonging to the culture of Ramayana and Mahabharata, don't call it mythology. Mythology is a negative word in the Western world. So therefore, we use the term Sattology instead of mythology. I have very, very special guests, and we have multiple special guests today. But we have very special guest, His Holiness Muktanand Puri Maharaj. Namaskar, Jai Shri Ram Maharaj.
Jai Shri Ram.
So Maharaj, when it comes to Devta and mantra, like which mantras are best for which Devta, or which mantras are best for prosperity or for education, for other things? Please, like before we tell us, like when briefly we can understand who is a Devta and then how we please them. But Ramayana Mahabharata has full references of that. I mean, in people make fun of Indra nowadays, but Ramayana, Mahabharata, Rigveda, Indra is highly respected. He's always referred to as Devraj, including all the Devta, including like the Devraj Indra in the Satsringa Muni ashram. When Sri Ram visited Ram, Devraj Indra refused to meet him. He said, "I'll meet him when the right time comes." So it's very exalted position. So please go ahead.
So, when we talk about the Hindu philosophy on the whole, at the highest level, we have Advaita Vedanta. In Advaita Vedanta, we have Brahm, which is without form, which is formless, which is all over, everywhere. So, it has these qualities of being omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, complete, eternal, etc. Now, what is happening is that when Brahman is there, Brahman by itself exists everywhere, and uh, we as sadhaks get when we practice our, do spiritual practices. The idea is to realize that we are Brahman. But when we look at it from the other point of view, the whole of Maya is like a dream. It's like Brahman's dream. Just like we have a dream, in the dream everything appears to be real, but in reality nothing is real. In the same way, this Maya in which we exist is the dream of Brahman, in which everything seems real. Now, if we exist, then everything else exists. If we don't exist, then obviously the world disappears. So when we talk about Brahman, it is Nirguna and Saguna. Nirguna means without form, and with form. So with form, when we talk about Ishwar or Devtas, they are in form. So they are actually in practice in the ambit of Maya. So they are there in that. And when we speak about any Devta, suppose I am praying to Lord Ganesh, or I pray to Lord Vishnu or Krishna or Shiv or any other form of any deity or Devta, they are considered as the form of Parabrahman. At the highest level, they are the form of Parabrahman. But the problem is that the person who is practicing, he is not ready to pray at that time, because he is not ready to pray to that formless form. So a form is required to which this person can pray. And at the basic level, if it's a completely new person, he doesn't even understand how to go about worshipping. So he needs the very simple basic practices, and from those basic practices onwards to higher levels, the practices keep increasing, and finally they reach a level where one can get let go of all this Maya, and one realizes that they are Brahman. So that is the basic background of this practice. Now the devtas which are there, they are with gun. Gun meaning with qualities. So each one has a certain and a different quality. For example, Saraswati Devi is what we know for arts and for knowledge. Lakshmi Devi is for wealth. But then if you look at it, knowledge is also wealth. So there are many parts of which cross into each other's functions in a certain sense if one goes deeply into it. So therefore, for each of these Devis and Devtas, there are different mantras and different things which are done. So basically, the topic which we were doing last is a continuation of what we did last time, which is the types of mantras. So these types of mantras are divided into, normally we say four such divisions, which is the Vedic mantras. The Vedic mantras are again with Nirgun mantras and Sagun mantras. They are actually called richas. So Nirgun is without quality. So there are some mantras which address Brahman directly. And there are other mantras which are addressing the devtas which are there. So this is one of the aspects. They are more complex and they are normally composed of Sanskrit language. In the mantras are in Sanskrit language. Then there are Puranic mantras. These Puranic mantras are a huge collection because there are 16 Puran and 16 Upurans. So 18 Purans and 18 Upurans, I'm sorry. So this is, they have all kinds of stotras and all in them. Now here the most important part of it is called Nam Stotra. There are different Nam Stotra like 5 names, 6 names, 8 names, 9 names, 11 names, 21 names, 108 names. Somewhere you will find 121 or 321 or 300 and something names, and then finally 1008 names or 1000 names, which is called the Sesnam or Sesnamavali. So this is one of the main practices. In fact, in the prayer of every devta, whenever we are praying through these mantras, we are invoking different parts of different forms of that God. This is considered to be one of the best practices which people can do because it's a very clean, purifying practice and has an effect of purifying the entire body. According to the practices, there are certain practices in which the tantric and Puranic practices are put together. So from the point of view of practice, there are different definitions of the word tantra. One of the definitions of tantra which you will find is that is the system of worship. So normally in Buddhist philosophy and others, you will often find this procedure or system of worship. So the system of worship of each of these devtas is laid out because each of them has a quality. And therefore, we are striving towards that particular quality, which is what is important to us. However, in practice, what happens is that when a guru turns up, which is who you're connected to and who is there in your, one can see maybe it's a destiny or maybe who you're connected to, maybe who you're interested, who impresses you. So whoever the deity, the person is worshipping, that is the deity one starts following, or that is the devta one starts following. Many of the Westerners have this tendency of assuming that devta means a demigod or something like that. Demigod and all is a Greek concept. It's not a Hindu concept. We don't have a concept of a quarter god, half god, full god, three-fourth god. We have only full god. Brahman is the form is not really a form of God. Actually, Brahman is what exists. It's a natural, it's just what exists. It's you can call it. You can, for the sake of no other word in the English language, one can say God. But in reality, God is not the term which one can use for Brahman. Ishwar may be the closest term which one can use for Brahman. And these devtas are a representation of that Brahman. So when you do a worship of the devta, the god is not 1/4 or 2/3 or 1/3 or 3/6 or something, or half or demigod or whatever. But it is you who are not at the level to worship him completely as Brahman. So therefore, you to bring yourself up, you have to go through the process stepwise, so that you can come up to a higher and higher level, and eventually you start feeling the effect of the worship, of the prayer, of the mantra, and all that starts it starts becoming visible in you as qualities, and it improves your memory, it improves your many of your abilities, and therefore one can say if your mind was a 10 working at 5% or 7% or 10%, the mind starts working at 20 and 30 and 40, eventually 70 and 90 and eventually 100%. And that is when you're 100%, that is which is what you can call Brahman. Now, mind is also a physical thing. This is beyond the mind, actually. So, it's for the sake of words, one uses terms like mind. So, therefore, the mind word is being used over here. So, I was talking about this Quranic practice where these 1,000 names are used. Here, normally, what happens is that usually, for example, we will take rice, color them, and take some yantras, and on the yantra, every time we recite the mantra, we will put some rice on that. It's as offering. Now, this entire rice which is collected eventually is considered to be the body of the Lord, or body of the particular devi or devta. Of course, after the puja is finished, it is taken and eventually offered into the river or the sea, where fishes can eat it. So that is what happens to it eventually. But that is because it has been used. The advantage of this particular form of puja is that once one starts doing this particular puja, the mantra is being recited, the recitation is happening, and somebody else may be reciting it. But the people who are sitting and simply pouring the rice on the particular yantra, the energy goes through them, because the yant itself is the form of the devi or the devta, and therefore they are getting energy through merely by offering the rice on top of the particular yantra. Now there are many different forms in which the upasana is done. In some cases there are roslas, in some cases there is money, in some cases there are some other things which are used to worship. So it depends on the purpose of the puja, for which purpose the person is doing the puja. So that is one of the important things about this. Apart from this, in the Puranic things, there is something called a kavach. Kavach is translated as armor. It's like a mantric text which is specially made to protect people. One may have observed that there are many of these people who are there. One can see them all over the world, and even some of the very well-known people who are such people like actors and actresses who one knows, who one has seen. Many of them are accident prone, and they often end up having accidents. So this kavach is very good for protecting against all kinds of such problems, such as accidents and other such things. Then there are certain things called stotra. Stotra is a praise of the form of God. So one has to recite the stotra. Then there are other classes of stotra. In this, there is something known as a Bhujang Prayat Stotra, which is a snake. So the meter is in the form of a snake. So it has a particular built in which it is written. In that form, it is called a Bhujang Prayat Stotram. The other types of stotras are called Panjar Stotra and Panjar Kavach. Panjar basically means a cage. So there are Vajra Panjar Kavach, for example. Shani Vajra Panjar Kavach, or Dattateya Vajra Panjar Vajra Vatateya Panjar Kavach. These are the kavachas which are there among the other forms of kavach. Now there are many kinds of kavach, and in the same devta can have numerous forms. For example, I think in Hanuman there is one face of Hanuman, and there is a kavach for that. Then there is a 5-face Hanuman kavach, 7-face Hanuman kavach, 11-face Hanuman kavach. There is another Maruti kavach. Then there is another kavach. There are some 7, 8 different armors which are used, and they have different uses. They have different strengths, and there are different methods of doing them also. And these are all used to protect the person in the given case. The stotras are also, there are many of them, and they are some of them are very long. One can find for the same devta or the form of God, one can find about maybe 7, 10, 11, 15 different forms, depending on who has written them. Sometimes they have been written by some devtas, sometimes they have been written by the Trideva, one of the Tridevs. Sometimes they have been written by some of the rishis over there. Sometimes they have been later written by some of the Shankaracharyas or some of the other sadhaks who have praised the Lord, and they have written these. In one of the very well known stotra is the Shiv Tandav Stotra, written by Ravan, as you may have heard of it. So these are some of the forms of text which are given, and they are considered as Puranic. The third type which I spoke about is Tantric. I have already given an explanation of the mantras based on the mixture of the Bij mantras and Sanskrit letters and all that, and plain alphabets, Akshar, last time. So this topic we have already covered, so I will not repeat it all over again. But the Tantric mantras are the ones which have got basic sounds with them, and they are combined with a particular devta. Now, the thing about these Bij mantras is that when these mantras work, they have a certain combination. Sometimes they may be single, sometimes they may be in a combination. So when they start working in a combination, the same combination, the particular one combination, for example, can work for attracting something. The same combination may be used, for example, by in a Krishna mantra. It may be used in a Kamdev mantra. It may be used in a third Vishnu mantra. It may be used in a Shiv mantra. So a similar combination will be used in many of these mantras, and they are asking different devtas for a similar effect. But usually, when you see the entire structure of the mantra, there may be some other word there or some other, Bij mantra in differentiating it in afterwards or in the beginning, or maybe the ending is different, like Nama or Swaha or something. So it differentiates, or sometimes there may be something like Hum Fat or Fat. So which will change the mantra. So the structure changes because of that. So the energies of the mantra are different. So these are the sort of changes which one can find when one is looking at these mantras. Then you have something called Saber Mantras. This is a topic which I wanted to take up separately completely, because we have a full body of texts which are Saber. Most people don't even know this. For example, if you look at the Manas, the Hanuman Chalisa, and all these texts, they're all written in Avdhi. So all the mantras which are not in Sanskrit, one can find them in Gujarati, one can find them in Bengali, one can find them in or South Indian languages, in Telugu, Tamil, all kinds of different languages, Odia. So these mantras exist all over the country. They were later on, when Tulsidas did a big grace of writing this in Avdi, because the common people could not understand Ramcharitramanas, etc. So when they could not understand the Ramayana in Sanskrit, so when it was written in Ramcharitramanas, it became accessible to all the people. So these are in Avdi, and in modern times, the Sabar mantras tend to work very fast. So Sabar mantras, I think we'll take up some other time as a completely entirely separate topic. One of the other things is when we come to the Sagun part of the mantras, which we were speaking about, the Sagun mantras can be in different forms, as I have explained earlier. Now, these mantras, that depends on who they are addressed to. So, like I said, there are different devtas depending on which devta they are addressed to. Sometimes the mantra, when you go into the whole depth of it, the dev, it may be addressed to the dev. It may be addressed to some of the so-called minor devtas. So, according to the structure, there are most of the devtas will take you to the level of enlightenment, but there are some devtas who are considered to be, like, for example, they are you can say sevaks, or they are the servitors of the Lord. So, for example, we have a form of the for the whole reason why the cow is worshipped in India, for example, is Kamdhenu or Surabhi, who is a divine cow. So she represents a particular power or energy of Lakshmi. In that sense, she is Lakshmi, and Lakshmi eventually is Parashakti, which means she is beyond the normal realm of this thing, and so she is Parabrahman or Brahman, as I spoke earlier. So this particular energy will be worshipped somewhere, some other part. For example, in Lord Vishnu has this vehicle which is known as Garud. Now, most people may not be aware, but according to the other part of the traditions, there are Lord Garud is also considered a form of Lord Shiv. So here he has separate powers of removing toxins and removing poisons, of healing, and so on and so forth. So these some of these other gods are who they worship, but there are certain other forms of beings in within this Maya who don't exactly come under as devtas. These are known as Yakshi, Yakshini, Apsara. Then they have Gandharva, Keener, Chetak, all kinds of other beings. So they have separate mantras which have separate. They're called prayogs. These prayogs or experiments, or you can say techniques, or rather, techniques is not the right word. One should say, special prayers for for special goals. So these are there which are done, and they again have different levels and different levels of beings which exist, and many of these mantras are addressed to them. Then we also have this particular text which is called Buddhamar Tantra, which is a particular text in which they have all kinds of lower beings, and there are mantras for that. But these are normally texts which are there for the sake of they're there, they exist in the tradition. but rarely does anybody actually practice these techniques. But they have all kinds of ghosts and lower beings, which one can you know one can utilize their energies if required. But most people will not practice these. Then we have this. Often, when you see a devta, you will find that. So, for example, Lord Vishnu is holding the Sudarshan chakra in his finger, or you see Shiv who has his bow, or you see a Trishul, or one sees any other. There are other weapons. So these are known as Astra mantras. There are mantras for these Astra. Thing about these Astra mantras is they are the ones. If you go deeper into the Indian tradition, then we have the Naga tradition. In the Naga tradition, each of these akhadas which are there, they have a god, a form of devta, and each of them have a astra, because these were basically, so the sadhus are divided into two parts. One is the shastradharis, which means the people who are the erudite monks or the scholars, and the other are the warriors. So the warriors were basically meant to protect the temples from invasions and from looting by different people, by different groups, maybe dacoits, maybe invaders, and so on and so forth. So they have these mantras which are especially there. And then again, if you go into history, one can remember Lord Vishwamitra and other rishis, who Brahm rishis and Dev rishis, who had all kind of divine weapons with them, and these divine weapons were mantric weapons. So they used through mantras. So there are mantras for these weapons also. Of course, the thing about them is that they have a huge amount of fire in them. So most ordinary people are not. Rather, I should say most people or ordinary people are not. They're not authorized to be able to do this kind of sadhana, because they will not be able to take it, and it will make them very bitter and angry. So that is why many of these sadhanas are there which are not done. So this is one of the other things. And then we have a lot of these peace mantras, which you will find in the Vedas also, and so on. So Sena Bhavatu, Sena Bharaktu, Sehaviryam Karva, Tejasvinavadi Tamastuma Vidushavaya, Om Shanti, 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 and so on and so forth. So there are a whole lot of mantras which are Shanti mantras. So these mantras are also there in the text. They are very good for calming down the person. Usually a lot of angry people who are there, some of the mantras which are there, they can do them. One of the most popular mantras is Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Padrani Pashantu, Ma Kashjit Bhagavad, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So this is one of the mantras which expresses the Hindu philosophy entirely, which says that let everybody be happy, let they be free of disease, let they have everything, let they not have any suffering, and let there be peace on all three levels. So this is the basic mantra of of Hinduism, which basically is the core value of Hinduism, and it's also a very good mantra for meditation. Now here, many of you may be thinking why I brought up both these issues. The reason I brought them up is a very deep reason actually. If you go into depth, one will find that there are two sides to a human being. One side is the side which is nourishing and normal, where he is living a normal life and everything is fine. The other side is this side which is the fight or flight mechanism, where he is trying to defend himself or he is running away from a danger. So the human body also is structured in the same way. In this, we have one part of the system which is nourishing us. When we are pushed under pressure, and we have this fight and flight mechanism which starts working, then all the blood and all the energy flows to our limbs, and we are at that time geared to, suddenly we feel a huge amount of energy coming in, and we are geared to either fight or run. So these are the two mechanisms which are there. In the subtle level, the Hindus have understood this. So on the subtle level also, there are the same kind of divisions. On one side, you have these astras which are fight or flight. It is fight. So if something happens, then you know what to use to protect yourself. But on the other side is the nourishing mantras, which are the mainstay. So the mainstay of the whole tradition is the nourishing mantras, which are basically meant to nourish you, which are meant to nourish society, which are meant to nourish the inner being of the person and make him divine. So this is it's actually a very deep topic which one can discuss very deeply, because if you go deeper into it, you will find that the mechanism which we have in our body is responsible for our responses. So, for example, if you're in a situation where you have a lot of stress, then it is your fight or flight mechanism which starts working. So, when you want to tackle it, then you have to have practices which are calming the mind and which are able to remove the stress. And I think in the modern world, we have a lot of this stress which is there. Actually, I sometimes joke about it. I tell people that if I have to do a seminar on stress reduction, the idea of doing a seminar on stress reduction itself can give you stress sometimes, because all the people have this. You come in and you see all these people sitting with stress, and that itself can be stressing. So this is the interesting thing about stress. Anyway, so this is one of the things about it. So maybe sometime later on we will go much more deeper into this topic. In the meantime, maybe there are some questions. It appears that Adityaji is not available today at the moment. There's maybe some hitch in the system or something. So since I'm on, I'll continue. One of the other things is that when we're talking about mantras, there are different conditions for the success in mantra. So it's actually a topic which we'll go into deeper. But like Aditya ji and the rest of the people had asked me earlier, that what are the conditions for that? So one of the prime conditions is that the guru should be able to be the person who should give the mantra, because he's the one who will explain to you what to do, how to do, in which direction to sit, how much to pray, how many times to repeat the mantra. Now, the other thing is that a lot of these people keep wanting to have a mantra on the internet. I spoke about this earlier also. But one of the important things to have on the internet when you take a mantra on the internet is you might not get the right mantra to start with. But on the other side, it is something which is taken from a non-conscious source. So therefore, one cannot expect that it will work in the same way as a mantra which is given by the guru. So therefore, when one is taking a mantra, it should always be taken from the guru, because he will give you a live mantra. It's a live vehicle. So one must prefer to always take diksha from the guru, so that the mantra you receive is in very good working condition, and the energy which is passed on from the guru to the shishya makes the mantra really worthwhile. So this is one of the other interesting things that makes the diksha very important. And also there is a connection with all the masters in the past and the blessings of all these masters. And especially in today's world, when many of us who are able to go to different gurus, so many of us, some of us are connected to more than one lineage, and therefore the blessings of multiple lineages can come to the receiver at many times.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for that wonderful long explanation. And it's very learning for many people. One question has come, like, for example, many times the ideas of, there's another show coming out, the cruelty of isms. So the West has made up many terms like monotheism and polytheism, pantheism, animism, and shamanism. Shamanism is very common in South America, and Maharaj is, I can see Maharaj, and he's also smiling now. So this is the way the Vatican-based institutions discriminate, that all these isms are considered negative and monotheism is at the top, but even that is ism, that is imaginary. So what do you have to answer when you talk about Devta and the mantras to those people who have been brainwashed by this mythology of isms?
No, in the Hindu perspective, we don't have polytheism as is put on, because basically we are saying there is only one, that is Brahman. So that Brahman is expressed in different forms because of different qualities which we seek. He has all the qualities, he, it, she, whatever, has all the qualities in it. So we are the ones who are seeking certain qualities. It is not Brahman, which is by giving it different names. We are not doing anything to change it or change the reality. It's the we who are incomplete, and therefore we who seek to make ourselves complete, who seek to make ourselves, 100%, so to say, 100% of that, realize that 100% that we are. So therefore, this concept of whatever isms they have, it doesn't really stand.
Yeah. So the general, like the in the South Americans and for Indians, basically all these terms were invented for Hindus. But generally in the South American, the shamanism and all these animism, like they call Hindus as animism also. So these are considered very natural because these are natural forces. Like for example, you can heal a person through mantra. Also, you have said it. Also, you can heal them emotionally as well as physically, and also you can have something natural, like a agnihotra or yagya. Like shamanism is somewhat derivative of that. So there is a severe attack. Like there are jokes made on shamanistic. If you look at TV serials, like in India, the jokes are made on Narad Muni, and here the jokes are made there, which is very disrespectful for those people who are doing it, because Narad Muni is a great person, and shamanism does have uh, roots in the Vedic philosophy. What do you have to say on that?
See, the thing is that if you have a malicious intent, there is nothing to be said about it actually. Now, if you have a chair in the university and you have professors who are sitting there who are not Hindus, who are not practicing Hindus, who don't respect Hindus, who go out of the way to denigrate Hinduism, so there is not much can be said about that. This is purely malicious, and when you're malicious, you can do and say anything you feel like. So this is what I have to say about it. As far as the healing and all that is concerned, there is a beyond the science, beyond the physical material science, there is a subtler science. I had explained earlier also that the mantra doesn't work out of some animal energy or something. It's an energy which works based on the energy which an individual has. Of course, there are subtler connections in that, which from where there is a particular flow which can come in certain cases, but the person who is involved, he has a certain energy. If you, for example, when we do a course in pranayam and people are doing pranayam, then the breathing it brings you to a level where you start feeling those energies which you haven't felt. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it will happen to a large majority, or at least 50% of the people who are present in that. Well, this same energy which you start feeling, which is like an electrical energy, it runs through the entire body, and that can be used eventually by bringing it to a certain place and removing a block, because there is a whole theory behind it of why that block is there, where it is that block. That block is not in your body. It is not in your, brain. It is in your mind. The mind is a subtle structure. In the subtle structure, if you when you have stress, you have stress because your mind has got a lot of trash in it. It's full of junk, all kind of trash in simple words. So this stuff is disturbing you. Now when you start doing the practices, all this negative thoughts and energy and all the stuff which is disturbing, all these emotions, they come out of your system. Once they come out of your system, it makes you feel better. So there's a simple logic to explain all this, in subtle in our philosophy, in our spiritual philosophy. If you want to be malicious and give it all kinds of different names, there's not much to be said. What to say?
That's true. That's true. Somebody is, and you correctly mentioned that most of these professors, like they come on the show, they are actually Christian pastors teaching Hindu studies in USA, and they claim to, like one of them even translated Ramanujacharya's three, and the Sri Vaishnavas and everyone was so offended by it, because Ramanujacharya is a great, like if you look at the story of Ramanujacharya, a great personality, and the leader of a sampradaya, and they mistranslated his books also in many ways. Just knowing Sanskrit
No,
is
it's
not enough.
not mistranslated, Aditya. Let me correct you. It's not mistranslated. When a university has got a chair, and in that chair you have a person sitting who is a non-Hindu, who is deliberately, maliciously translating it. It's a malicious translation. It's an institutionalized form of discrimination against the Hindus. It cannot be called mistranslation. It is malicious translation. It's a intentional mistranslation, intentional, deliberate intention, wish, desire to hurt Hindus. So That is how I see it.
No, I really get your name there, maltranslation.
Yeah. Maybe.
So thank you so much, Maharaj, for coming on the show and educating many of us here. And for all the viewers who are watching on YouTube, do send your comments. And Maharaj's website will be there in the all the video comments. You can check it out and directly contact him also through the website. So thank you so much. Jai Shri Ram and Namaste.
Jai Shri Ram ji.
Shri
Thank
Ram.
you.